Being bad at talking to people is one of the most socially acceptable things you can be bad at, right up there with parallel parking and replying to texts. And just like those things, most people assume they're just built that way and leave it at that. The problem is that talking to people is basically the load-bearing wall of your entire life. Your job, your relationships, your reputation, all of it runs on your ability to have a conversation. So when people say they're just an introvert or just awkward, what they're really saying is they've decided to leave the load-bearing wall a little cracked and just hope the ceiling holds. Here's a chart. On one axis, how good you are at talking to people. On the other, how much of your life is going well. Surprise! It's a straight line. The good news is that talking to people is actually a skill, not a personality trait, not something you're born with, not something that requires years of therapy to fix. A skill, like parallel parking, which means it can be learned. And the way most people try to learn it is completely backwards. Most advice you'll find tells you to ask more questions, make eye contact, remember people's names. And that advice isn't wrong exactly. It's just that it treats conversation like a checklist. And if you've ever been in a conversation where you were mentally running through a checklist, you know that it makes you worse, not better. You're so busy remembering to nod every 4 seconds that you completely miss what the other person just said. Tip 1. Stop trying to be interesting and start being interested. There's a very specific feeling you get when you're talking to someone, and you can tell they're waiting for their turn to speak. They're nodding, but their eyes are already rehearsing their next sentence. You can feel it. And the moment you feel it, the conversation is over. The reason this happens is because most people approach conversation as a performance. They want to seem interesting, seem funny, seem smart. Actually listen. Not politely listen, where you nod and wait. Actually listen. Because when you're genuinely curious, you don't have to think of a follow-up question. It just comes out. Most people spend their entire day not being listened to. So when someone actually listens, it feels unusual enough that people remember it. A useful way to practice this is to try to end every conversation knowing one specific thing about the other person that you didn't know at the start. Tip 2. Get comfortable with silence. Here's a chart. On one axis, how uncomfortable a silence is. On the other, how long it's actually been. The line goes up much faster in your head than it does in real time. A silence that feels like 12 seconds of social death is usually about 2 seconds of normal human pause. The people who are genuinely good at conversation use it constantly. They pause before they answer. Tip 3. Stop over-explaining yourself. Here's a chart. On one axis, how much you explain. On the other, how much the other person trusts what you're saying. After a certain point, the line goes down. Say the thing and stop. The urge to keep talking after you've already answered is almost always anxiety, not information. People who state their opinions plainly come across as more confident than people who bury their opinion inside 4 layers. Tip 4. Have a few topics you can actually go deep on. Most awkward conversations are awkward because both people are skimming. Weather, weekend plans, how busy work has been. It ends the same way every time, with someone saying anyway and looking for a door. The conversations that people actually remember are the ones where something real got said. You don't need a lot of these. You need maybe 2 or 3 topics where you have actual opinions and actual knowledge and actual interest. Because when you're talking about something you actually care about, the whole checklist problem disappears. Tip 5. The exponential problem. Every good conversation gives you a small amount of evidence that you can have good conversations. Every conversation you avoid is a small confirmation that conversations are hard. This is why people who are already good at talking to people seem to get better effortlessly. It's not talent. It's just which direction the compounding is going. Just pick one conversation per day that you would normally skip. The person at the coffee shop, the colleague you always nod at, the neighbor you've made eye contact with 40 times without ever speaking. Even a mediocre conversation is a data point that you survived it. You don't get confident and then start. You start badly, and confidence shows up later, uninvited, once it has enough evidence to believe in you. Anyway, if that helped, I'm collecting donations in the form of subscribes to fund the next video.